everyone, welcome. You're watching News9 Live with me, Neha Khanna, and our big focus on this show is also on the Israel-Hamas war. Let's get started with our top story. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has described Hamas as a liberation group which is waging a battle to protect its land, terming Israel's actions in Gaza as savage. Erdogan informed a group of his party MPs, that he had decided to cancel his visit to Israel and accused the Israeli government of taking advantage of Turkey's good intentions. Erdogan, however, clarified that he had no problem with the existence of Israel as a state, but had a problem with the Israeli government's policies. The Turkish president also called for regional actors to stop adding fuel to the fire with their increasing support to Israel. On the other hand, he's urged the Muslim countries in the region to work together towards a ceasefire and lasting peace.
Bir terör örgütü değil, topraklarını ve vatandaşlarını koruma mücadelesi veren, evet, bir kurtuluş ve bir mücahitler grubu.
French President Emmanuel Macron is on a visit to West Asia in a bid to try and de-escalate the situation between Israel and Hamas. On Wednesday, Macron held a meeting with the King of Jordan, Abdullah II, in the Jordanian capital Amman. King Abdullah told Macron that ending the war in Gaza was an urgent necessity, and he also warned that if the war escalates, there could be an explosion in the region. In a statement released by the Royal Court of Jordan, the monarch told the French president that Israel should be pressurized by global powers to stop its bombing operations and end its siege of Gaza. And Qatari Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman bin Jassim Al Thani has said Qatar condemns the collective punishment policy that Israel has adopted vis-a-vis Gaza. He said diplomacy is the only way to reach a peaceful solution. Al Thani made the statement during a joint press conference with Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan in Doha. The Turkish Foreign Minister, during the press conference, said an Israeli ground operation in Gaza would turn the fighting into a massacre. He added that those supporting Israel's actions under the pretense of solidarity are accomplices of crimes.
The state of Qatar condemns the collective punishment policy against the Gaza Strip and its residents. Even today, there are 2.3 million Palestinians deprived of their basic needs like water, food, medicine and electricity, and this is a flagrant breach of the laws. We are sure that the only way to reach a peaceful agreement and direct to this crisis is to keep all communication channels open with all the relevant parties, and that the solution for this crisis needs continuous communication and quick response to lessen the deterioration of the situation. And we value all the regional, international and UN efforts in this regard.
The Israel Defense Forces have said they struck several Syrian military targets after rockets were fired from Syria towards Israeli communities in the Golan Heights. The IDF says the fighter jets hit military infrastructure and mortar launching sites. 11 Syrian soldiers have been killed in the strikes by the IDF. Reports have also come in suggesting that the Israeli military strikes caused severe damage to the headquarters of the 5th Armored Division of the Syrian Army. Israel has traded fire with Lebanon's Hezbollah and militants in Syria in recent days as the conflict widens over its northern border. Israel has released footage of its missiles hitting targets that it says were to be used by the Hamas terrorist group. The Israeli army said the strikes were carried out on Tuesday and infrastructure belonging to Hamas, such as tunnel shafts, military headquarters, weapons warehouses, as well as equipment like mortar launchers and anti-tank missile launchers, had been destroyed. Some of the targets destroyed had been creating blockades that prevented Gazans from evacuating to southern Gaza, according to the Israeli army. So, is Israel already facing the prospect of a multi-front war? Is a question that many are asking as gunfire between the Israeli Defense Forces and forces in Syria on the one hand and Hezbollah in Lebanon on the other continues. The Israeli Defense Forces have confirmed the killing of Hamas's North Khan Yunis battalion commander Tayyip Mubashir in Gaza. Mubashir was a key figure in Hamas, had a history of directing terror attacks, including the 2002 Afzoma pre-military academy attack and the 2014 Hamas infiltration via Zikim Beach. IDF has said Mubashir was closely associated with Hamas's military wing leader Mohammad Dief and had expertise in both military and weapons manufacturing within the group. Reports say leaders of Hezbollah group have met with Hamas and the Islamic Jihad leadership. Hezbollah in this meeting reportedly assessed their alliance with Hamas and things that need to be done for achieving quote-unquote real victory for the resistance in Gaza. The meeting was reportedly held between Hezbollah's Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah with Hamas deputy chief Saleh al-Aruri and Islamic Jihad chief Ziad al-Nakhala. Israeli military dropped leaflets in Gaza urging Palestinians to provide information on the hostages that are being held by Hamas. The IDF has offered protection as well as financial rewards to the informants. The leaflets carried information and phone numbers to call and a QR code to pass information on a secure line. Hamas has kidnapped more than 200 Israelis. This happened, of course, during its cross-border raids into Israel on the 7th of October that left more than 1,400 Israelis dead. Despite the offer, residents tore up the leaflets and sloganeered against Israel. Israeli forces are waiting for orders for a ground invasion to not only rescue hostages but wipe out Hamas, as they put it. Hamas has released some hostages in the last few days and promised to release more if and when the conditions set by them are met.
تم توجيه لنا بعدد مناشير من الطيران إلى المواطنين بالهروب من قطاع غزة للانسحاب إلى المناطق الجنوبية، فتم الناس في سحبهم إلى الجنوب، فتم اغتيال الناس وهم ذاهبين إلى المناطق الآمنة اللي أمنتهم إليها إسرائيل، فتم لهم هذا من النوع الاحتيالي والنوع الكذب والوهم للمواطنين. واحنا ناس ولا لنا في تنظيمات ولا لنا في اول ولا في اخر. عباب الله احنا عمال بنشتغل. شحن عباب الدار هدموه. صغار 30 نفر قعدنا ننقل فيهم من ندفه لندفه، اطلع من الشيخ من الكرامه، طلعنا على الشيخ رضوان، لحقونا في الشيخ رضوان، اطلع على الواد، في الواد بعد الواد صاروا يضربوا ومش عارفين وين نروح. كل غزه مهدده للقصف.
Clashes between Hezbollah and the Israeli military so far have been mostly limited to towns along the border. An Israeli helicopter attack struck an empty position near the border town of Hawla after a missile fired from Lebanon hit an Israeli military position. The Israeli military said the anti-missile attack hit a position in Manara, but there were no casualties. Colleague Manish Jha reports from the Lebanese border. Take a look at this ground report.
टीवी 9 की टीम इस वक्त इजराइल लेबनान बॉर्डर पर मेतुला में है। मेतुला वो जगह है जो लेबनान बॉर्डर पर इजराइल का आखिरी इलाका है। इस वक्त कैमरे पर हम उन तस्वीरों को आपको दिखा रहे हैं। देखिए लेबनान बॉर्डर पर जो मेतुला के इलाके में किस तरह से जो इजरायली डिफेंस फोर्स ने टेक ओवर किया है और यहाँ से रहने वाले सभी लोगों को सुरक्षित जगहों पर भेज दिया गया है। लगातार रहकर दोनों तरफ से क्रॉस फायरिंग होती है। अक्सर टैंक से आर्टिलरी से जो फायर किए जाते हैं उसकी आवाज़ से ये पूरा इलाका थर्रा उठता है। मेतुला में रहने वाले जो तमाम लोग हैं उन सबको यहाँ से कई किलोमीटर दूर सुरक्षित जगह पर रखने की नौबत इसलिए पड़ी थी क्योंकि इस पहाड़ी के उस पार से जो हिजबुल्लाह के पोस्ट हैं वहाँ से लगातार इन इलाकों में रॉकेट या मिसाइल दागे जाते थे। अक्सर इन यहाँ पर मौजूद जो आर्मी के पोस्ट हैं उन सबको टारगेट किया जाता था और फिर आईडीएफ भी जवाबी कार्रवाई करती है और इस पहाड़ी के दूसरी तरफ जो हिजबुल्लाह के पोस्ट हैं, चाहे वो मिलिट्री पोस्ट हैं या उनके टावर हैं या फिर उनके बेस, उन सबको टारगेट किया जाता है। और पहाड़ी पर आपको इस तरह के अलग अलग जो कम्युनिकेशन टावर हैं वो सब दिखाई देंगे लगभग हर पहाड़ी पर। यहाँ देखिए मेतुला में ही स्थित इस तरह की पहाड़ी पर जो आपको कम्युनिकेशन टावर है, क्योंकि यहीं टावर के पास या टावर के नीचे अलग अलग सुरक्षित जगह पर आईडीएफ के बेस मौजूद हैं, वहाँ पर आर्म पर्सनल्स मौजूद हैं। इस वक्त हम जो आपको सामने में जो रेजिडेंशियल इलाका देख रहे हैं, हम वहाँ तक गए थे। वहाँ पर इजराइल की जो आर्मी है उन्होंने बैरिकेड लगा रखा है और उसके आगे फिर किसी भी सिविलियन की एंट्री बंद है। वहाँ सिर्फ और सिर्फ आर्म पर्सनल्स को ही रहने की इजाज़त दी जा रही है। इस वक्त जो कैमरे पर आप ये पूरा इलाका देख रहे हैं, ये वो जगह है जहां पर इजराइल और लेबनान के होने वाले किसी भी संघर्ष को लेकर न केवल ये दोनों देश बल्कि पूरी दुनिया सशंकित है। यही वजह है कि इजराइल के राष्ट्रपति भी ये बात कहते हैं कि हम हिजबुल्लाह के साथ जंग नहीं चाहते हैं, लेकिन अगर हिजबुल्लाह ने जंग किया तो फिर वैसे में लेबनान तबाह हो जाएगा। तो ये हालात इस जगह का है, वो इसलिए क्योंकि यहाँ टक्कर बराबरी की है। आईडीएफ नहीं चाहता कि अभी आईडीएफ की ताकत और आईडीएफ का ध्यान वो कहीं से भी दक्षिणी इजराइल में हमास के खिलाफ हो रही कार्रवाई से बटकर हिजबुल्लाह की तरफ आ जाए। लेकिन चूंकि हिजबुल्लाह लगातार हमास की मदद करने को आमदा है और इसीलिए हिजबुल्लाह की तरफ से आईडीएफ के ठिकानों पर या फिर इजराइल के इलाकों पर रॉकेट दागे जाते हैं, टैंक से फायर किए जाते हैं और जिसके बाद फिर आईडीएफ की कार्रवाई होती है और ये सब कुछ इन इलाकों में बदस्तूर जारी है।
Fears among world powers that the conflict between Israel and Hamas in Gaza will spill into other countries could turn into a reality sooner than anybody thinks. The United Nations says fighting between Israeli forces and Hezbollah along the Lebanese border is displacing huge numbers of people. Here's a report.
These are fires blazing on the border between Israel and Lebanon over the weekend, the result of fighting between Israeli forces and Hezbollah. As the war between Israel and Islamist militants in Gaza continues, fears are growing that the conflict will spill over into other countries. The United Nations reported on Monday that almost 20,000 people have now been forced from their homes in Lebanon, most of them to escape the border fighting. The UN's International Organization for Migration says they started tracking the displacement on October 8th, a day after the devastating Hamas attacks on Israeli communities. Hezbollah is supporting Hamas in the war. Reuters recently found this woman in a school converted into a temporary shelter near the border. She's saying she couldn't find another place to stay. Even UN peacekeepers wouldn't take them in. She was in the middle of cooking when she fled, and her neighbor's house was destroyed. Israeli communities on the border have also been evacuating, with dozens of towns and villages ordered by the government to clear out. Hezbollah hasn't fully committed its forces to the war, and it's not clear if or when it may do so. As of Monday, it's reported to have lost over 24 fighters since October 7th. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned that if Hezbollah did open up a second front to the conflict, that it would bring unimaginable devastation to Lebanon.
News9's Manish Jha reports from the Israel-Lebanon border. Take a look.
TV9 की टीम इस वक्त इजराइल लेबनान बॉर्डर पर आखिरी पोस्ट पर मौजूद है और जिसके सामने महज 200-400 मीटर की दूरी पर लेबनान का पोस्ट है। लेबनान का इलाका शुरू होता है, हिजबुल्लाह का पोस्ट शुरू होता है और इस वक्त सबसे पहले हम आपको दिखाते हैं TV9 के कैमरे पर। आप जो ये पोस्ट देख रहे हैं, यहाँ पर इजराइल की बॉर्डर ख़त्म होता है, तो ये इजरायली सेना का इस इलाके में आखिरी पोस्ट है। इस पहाड़ की चोटी पर आप इजराइल की सेना की ये आखिरी पोस्ट को देख रहे हैं और इसका लोकेशन हम अब आपको दिखाने जा रहे हैं। उससे आपको अंदाज़ा होगा कि हम इस वक्त कहाँ पर मौजूद हैं। ये जो साइन बोर्ड्स आप देख रहे हैं जिसमें मनारा क्लिफ, यिप्ता और मिगाव एम जैसे लोकेशन के नाम हैं। इस वक्त हम यहाँ पर मौजूद हैं, लेकिन हम ये चीज़ें आपको क्यों दिखा रहे हैं और क्यों मैं हेलमेट पहना हूँ और बुलेट प्रूफ जैकेट में इस तरह से हूँ, उसकी असली वजह अब आप देखिए। TV9 के कैमरे पर आप उन तस्वीरों को देखने जा रहे हैं जो आज तक आपने नहीं देखा होगा। कि देखिए इजराइल और लेबनान के बॉर्डर में दोनों तरफ से जो पोस्ट है वो कितने नज़दीक है। कैमरे पर जो आप अभी तस्वीरें देख रहे हैं, ये सामने की पहाड़ी पे बने हुए घर, जिसमें से कुछ घर इनकम्प्लीट भी हैं, तो वो घर आप देख रहे हैं, ये सब लेबनान के घर हैं। लेबनान का इलाका शुरू होता है बस 200 मीटर दूरी पर स्थित इस सामने की पहाड़ी की चोटी पर जो आप घर देख रहे हैं। और मैं अगर चाहूँ तो यहाँ गिन के भी बता सकता हूँ, तकरीबन 1 दर्जन घर जो है, जिसमें से कुछ मल्टी स्टोरी बिल्डिंग अभी इनकम्प्लीट है। वहीं दूसरी तरफ मुझे जो साफ दिखाई दे रहा है कि एक मस्जिद दिख रहा है वहाँ पर, और कुछ और दूसरे इलाके दिखा रहे हैं। इजरायली सेना ने हमें बताया कि ये सभी इलाके जो हैं वो लेबनान के पोस्ट हैं, हिजबुल्लाह के पोस्ट हैं, और यहाँ से लगातार इजरायली पोस्ट पर अटैक होता है। दोनों तरफ से कार्रवाई होती है। लेकिन आप ये देखिए, अमित थोड़ा संभल कर, थोड़ा सा और हम आगे आते हैं और फिर दिखाने की कोशिश करते हैं। आप देखिए ये सारे घर जो हैं ये सब लेबनान के घर हैं, और लेबनान के घर का मतलब ये है कि इजराइल लेबनान बॉर्डर पर ये सब जितने घर हैं, इन घरों में अभी फ़िलहाल हिजबुल्लाह के लोग रहते हैं। वो जो बगल में पोस्ट आपको दिखाई दे रहा है वो हिजबुल्लाह के पोस्ट हैं, जहाँ से वो लगातार पहाड़ी के इस चोटी पर जहाँ पर मैं खड़ा हूँ, यहाँ पर वो अटैक करते हैं।
The Israeli military has once again accused Iran of having ordered the recent attacks by terrorist groups based in Yemen, Iraq and Lebanon. In a televised media briefing, the chief ministry spokesperson Daniel Hagari said Iran was providing Hamas with weapons, training, funding and intelligence services. He also accused Iran of promoting an anti-Israel sentiment globally through online messaging campaigns. Listen in.
איראן סייעה לחמאס לפני המלחמה במישרין, באימונים, בהספקת אמצעי לחימה, כסף, ידע טכנולוגי. גם ברגעים אלה נמשך הסיוע האיראני לחמאס במודיעין ובהסתה ברשתות ובדרבון בכל העולם בהסתה כנגד מדינת ישראל. במזרח התיכון שהשלוחים, הפרוקסי, כפי שהם מכונים על ידי איראן, פועלים מעיראק, תימן ולבנון, ההנחיות מגיעות רק ממקום אחד, מאיראן. מי שמערער את המזרח התיכון עבור מעשי חמאס דאעש הנפשעים, שלא יתחבא.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's son Yair is drawing flack for remaining in the United States at a time when the country is at war. Yair's stay in the US is particularly drawing anger as he remains away at a time when nearly 4 lakh Israeli youngsters have come back to Israel and joined their homeland's fight against Hamas. A picture of the 32-year-old Yair Netanyahu on a beach has gone viral, with many claiming that he is enjoying far away in the comforts of Miami while his countrymen face the hardships of war after the horrific attacks by Hamas on the 7th of October. More than 750 Palestinians were killed in overnight airstrikes by the Israeli Defense Forces. As per the Ministry of Health, in Gaza, the dead included 344 children. Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry has said it was the highest 24-hour death toll in Israel's 2-week-old siege. Health ministry also says that more than 6,500 Palestinians, including over 2,700 children, have been killed in Gaza in Israeli airstrikes since the 7th of October. The Israeli military has said it has hit over 400 Hamas targets and killed dozens of its fighters overnight, but that it would take time to destroy Gaza's ruling Islamist group. There appeared to be little prospect of a ceasefire anytime soon in the bloodiest episode in the Israel-Palestine conflict in decades. The United Nations World Food Programme has warned of a deteriorating crisis in Gaza, with conditions among the worst the organisation has ever seen. Brian Lander, the deputy head of emergencies at the WFP, said people in the enclave are in desperate need of food, water, medicines and other basic essentials for their very survival. Some people are living on just 1 litre of water a day. Others have been reduced to boiling sea water for consumption. while organizations like the WFP have been unable to reach 1.1 million people in desperate need of food.
What's the worst case scenario? What kind of support does it have, the kind of access that we need?
Without the ability for humanitarian organizations to reach people in need, the situation, as I said, is only going to deteriorate for them. We know that people are in desperate need of water, desperate need of food, desperate need of all those things that are primary for your survival, and yet the crisis continues without our ability to reach them. So the situation is as bad as we've seen anywhere in the world, and we know in the next days it's going to be very tragic for many. No, it is not sufficient at all. We do not have the access that we need, both to access Gaza itself, but then within Gaza to be able to move commodities, to be able to ensure that our safety of our staff on the ground. We do not have those assurances at all, and therefore we cannot access the people that need the desperate assistance that we can provide. It's only going to get worse. We know that food is running low in Gaza in the shops. From our contacts with the traders that we've been working with, we know that people are running out of food very quickly. We are trying to get food into Gaza. The only route at the moment is through the Rafah crossing with Egypt, but that's very limited, and we do not have the kind of access that we need to understand and to be able to provide people with the food that they need.
Disturbing footage released by the Palestine Red Crescent Society shows the aftermath of Israeli attacks in southern Gaza. The PRCS headquarters, as seen in the video, is filled with people who have fled the violence. A nearby airstrike injured individuals and caused significant damage near the headquarters and the Al Amal hospital in Khan Yunis, prompting around 4,000 displaced people to seek refuge. In this footage, people can be seen seeking shelter inside the corridors of the Palestinian Red Crescent Society's headquarters in southern Gaza. The video shows makeshift sleeping arrangements with beds on the floor and individuals gathered on staircases. The building's entrance exhibits the aftermath of the conflict, with broken glass scattered on the floor, shattered windows and significant damage. This comes in the wake of Israeli attacks in the area, forcing thousands of people to seek refuge within the damaged headquarters. In another heart-wrenching account from Gaza, the lives of infant twins Wateen and Ahmed were forever altered by a tragic Israeli strike. Their mother was tragically killed in an instant during the airstrikes.
When these strikes began, they were about to turn 14 months, a year and 2 months. Wateen and Ahmed are breastfeeding babies. At midnight, my sister called us and said she would feed her twins and sleep before they start striking. At 2 a.m. we heard an explosion. We woke up and saw that her parents-in-law's house and her house were on fire. She was protecting the boy, Ahmed, so he wasn't injured. But her daughter, as you can see, is injured. What did they do to deserve this? Ahmed is at home and I'm sure he feels the absence of his sister. As we say, twins are always connected. He is always crying at home and she is in the hospital. After the airstrike, you know we are the closest people to Wateen, but she doesn't recognise us. Her father plays with her, but she doesn't recognise him. Aside from the pain she's experiencing, a while ago there was an airstrike and she started to scream.
The role of cryptocurrency in terror financing has come under renewed scrutiny following a deadly attack in Israel by the Palestinian terrorist group Hamas. Take a look at this report.
There has been a lot of focus on how crypto is used to fund terrorist organizations and militant groups. So since the Palestinian militant group Hamas launched an attack on Israel at the start of October, the role of crypto in funding militant groups and terror organizations has really come into the spotlight. Hamas itself has been known to raise money via cryptocurrencies. Over the past few weeks, the Israelis have frozen several cryptocurrency wallets it said were linked to Hamas. Many people say that crypto is an extremely useful tool for these kind of organizations. It's largely anonymous. The money that anyone sends over the blockchain, that's the technology that underpins cryptocurrency, is usually just identified by a string of letters and numbers. It's difficult to track, and this means that for militant groups or terrorists seeking to raise money, crypto has become a very popular tool. Now, it's not completely anonymous. Cryptocurrency companies, that means exchanges, as well as law enforcement organizations, can actually work out who is sending the money, but it takes a bit of work for them to do that. The United Nations officials said in 2022 that about 5% of terror attacks were considered to be financed by cryptocurrencies. A variety of cryptocurrencies are known to be used by terrorist groups and militant groups to raise funds. That said, while Bitcoin is popular, stablecoins, that's a type of cryptocurrency that's designed to keep a very steady value, have become more popular in recent years. There are also a number of other sources that these groups use to raise funds. That's anything from charities, shell companies, investments overseas, to also raise funds. So crypto is definitely part of the mix, but it's very difficult to say exactly what proportion.
US Republicans have nominated Mike Johnson of Louisiana as their Speaker nominee in the House of Representatives. This move comes amidst the congressional paralysis that's been plaguing the United States for weeks now, ever since the oust of Kevin McCarthy as Speaker 3 weeks ago. Johnson is the fourth Republican nominee in 3 weeks. We have more for you in this story.
US House Republicans picked Mike Johnson from Louisiana as what is now their fourth Speaker nominee late Tuesday to fill up the leadership vacuum that has paralyzed the chamber for 3 weeks. The previous 3 Speaker bids failed to gain enough support. Johnson told reporters he hoped to change that and get congressional action rolling.
We're going to serve the people of this country. We're going to restore their faith in this Congress, this institution of government. America is the last best hope of man on the earth.
With 3 Speaker bids already rejected by Republicans, it's not clear whether Johnson, a conservative constitutional law attorney, can overcome party divisions and avoid falling victim to GOP infighting. Tom Emmer only lasted hours, withdrawing his nomination after receiving it earlier on Tuesday. Emmer failed to attract enough support and win the 217 votes the Republican Party needs to win the Speaker's gavel. A small group of holdouts denied him victory, like Representative Jim Jordan and number 2 House Republican Steve Scalise before him. Republicans have been unable to settle on a leader since a small faction from their party ousted incumbent Kevin McCarthy early this month, after he brokered a deal with Democrats to head off a government shutdown. It's led lawmakers unable to respond to wars in the Middle East and in Ukraine and a looming government shutdown deadline in mid-November. In total, 14 Republicans have put their names forward for Speaker this month. Democrats have said they are open to a compromise candidate who would allow the chamber to function, though many Republicans have said on principle that they would not back somebody who had support from the opposition party.
A number of US states are suing Meta Platforms and its Instagram unit for negatively impacting the mental health of young people because of the addictive nature of these platforms. Here's a look at exactly what's prompted this court battle.
Dozens of US states are suing Instagram and its parent company Meta, accusing them of fueling a mental health crisis among young people with their addictive social media platforms. In one of the lawsuits, the attorneys general of 33 states filed a joint complaint in the Oakland, California federal court on Tuesday, including New Jersey's Matt Platkin.
I'm joining dozens of other attorneys general across the United States in a massive undertaking to once and for all hold Meta the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, and its CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, accountable for the deceptive practices and years of harm they have brought upon our young people.
According to the court filing, they are accusing Meta of repeatedly misleading the public about the dangers of its platforms and knowingly inducing children and teenagers into compulsive social media use to, quote, maximize its financial gains.
There needs to be more transparency.
Much of the lawsuit stems from a whistleblower's release of documents in 2021 that show the company knew Instagram, which began as a photo-sharing app, was addictive. And it points to research that has linked children's use of Meta social media platforms with depression, anxiety, insomnia, interference with education and daily life, and many other negative outcomes. Meta said in a statement it was disappointed that the states chose to sue, quote, instead of working productively with companies across the industry to create clear, age-appropriate standards for the many apps teens use. 8 other U.S. states and Washington, D.C. filed similar lawsuits against Meta in other courts on Tuesday. That means, in total, 42 jurisdictions are taking action against the California-based company. Meta could face civil penalties of up to $50,000 for each violation of various state laws. It's an amount that could add up quickly, given the millions of children and teenagers who use Instagram.
Iceland's Prime Minister, Katrin Jakobsdóttir, along with women across the nation, went on a 24-hour strike. Why? They are protesting against gender inequality, gender-based violence, and to highlight the unpaid work such as child care that often falls on women. According to a study from the University of Iceland, 40% of Icelandic women experience gender-based and sexual violence in their lifetime. In protest against this, schools and libraries were either closed or operated on limited hours, and hospitals were handling only emergency cases as thousands protested.
I think this day is for all women in Iceland. I am lucky that I am working at a company that has equal payment both for women and men, but I am here for my daughters and for all other women in the country.
As we said, the government and the Prime Minister of Iceland are also standing strong with the women protesters. Let's listen into what this particular member of parliament had to say on this entire protest.
It's an extremely important day. We are, you could say, in a way, celebrating the power of the important women 48 years ago. Our foremothers, our role models for equality in our society, justice, women. This day means women's empowerment, and also a clear message to the whole world that we need equality, we need justice, we need freedom. So this is a message here from Iceland. We have to stand together, be united, women all over the world, but also men all over the world. All gender all over the world, we need to unite more than differ.
Let's now shift our focus to India. A high-level committee for social sciences constituted by the National Council of Educational Research, or NCRT, has recommended replacing the name India with Bharat in all textbooks. Chairperson of the committee, C.I. Isaac, said the recommendation was arrived at with a unanimous decision by the 7-member committee. Talking about the reasons for this recommendation, Isaac said Bharat is an age-old name and also finds a mention in several ancient texts like the 7,000-year-old Vishnu Puran. He added that even the constitution states India, that is Bharat, in the first article. This comes after the name Bharat appeared on the name placards that were placed before Prime Minister Narendra Modi during the G20 summit in September.
The BJP government at the national level wanted to change the Indian structure. Why we are calling Reserve Bank of India Indian Administrative Service, Indian Foreign Service? In all our passports, we have Republic of India, Constitution of India. I think something wrong has happened to this government. Why, I don't know. Why are you confusing the young mind of Indians? Bharatiya Janani Tanujate Jai He Karnataka Mata, even in Kannada also. We all are, who are telling that we are not Bharatiyas, but we all are proud Indians. I think whatever they have taken a stand is completely anti-people, anti-India, anti-Bharat. See, I am telling you, they have been forced by the NDA government. This is completely wrong. We totally agree. I appeal to the government of India not to go to this stand. You can't change the history of India. India
Bangladesh has been hit by Cyclone Hamoon and it's caused substantial damage with loss of life and battered homes. At least 3 people have reportedly been killed due to the cyclone. The cyclonic storm has moved into a deep depression over southeast Bangladesh and is impacting the adjoining Indian state of Mizoram as well. As per the Indian Met Department, the cyclone is very likely to move northeastwards and further weaken into a depression. The Met Department is also predicting light to moderate rainfall over northeastern India. Mexico's southern coast braced for Hurricane Otis as the Category 5 storm made landfall near Acapulco. The hurricane reached land near Acapulco, bringing maximum sustained winds around 165 miles per hour and heavy rain as well. The U.S. National Hurricane Center has warned that the cyclone has the potential to cause catastrophic damage. California's Department of Motor Vehicles suspended GM self-driving car company Cruise on Tuesday, ordering its robotaxis off the road in San Francisco because they posed an unreasonable risk to public safety. That is according to a statement from the state's DMV, which said Cruise had misrepresented information related to the safety of its autonomous technology. The suspension, effective immediately, is a major setback for General Motors and comes after a series of accidents involving Cruise vehicles. Here's a full report.
California's Department of Motor Vehicles suspended GM's self-driving car company Cruise on Tuesday, ordering its robotaxis off the road in San Francisco because they posed a, quote, unreasonable risk to public safety. That's according to a statement from the state's DMV that said Cruise had misrepresented information related to the safety of its autonomous technology. The suspension, effective immediately, is a major setback for General Motors and comes after a series of accidents involving Cruise vehicles. Cruise said the DMV reviewed an incident on October 2nd when one of its self-driving vehicles was putting on the brakes, but did not avoid striking a pedestrian who had previously been struck by a hit-and-run driver. Cruise said that in that incident, a human driver, quote, tragically struck and propelled the pedestrian into the path of the autonomous vehicle, which struck the pedestrian. GM CEO Mary Barra, who has previously said Cruise represents a giant growth opportunity, said its robotaxis have better safety records than human drivers. Shares of GM ended more than 2% lower on Tuesday.
Wall Street's main indices advanced on Tuesday as solid corporate earnings and optimistic forecasts fueled a broad market rally. The Dow rose over 0.6%, the S&P 500 gained more than 0.7%, and the Nasdaq climbed by over 0.9%. This upward trend was supported by interest rate sensitive mega cap stocks, with treasury yields staying below their recent high of 5%. It was a day of positive momentum for the major US stock indices.
Wall Street's main indexes ended higher on Tuesday as a string of solid corporate earnings and upbeat forecasts sparked a broad rally. The Dow gained more than 0.6%, the S&P 500 added more than 0.7%, and the Nasdaq climbed over 0.9%. Sam Stovall, chief investment strategist at CFRA Research, credits an easing of the benchmark 10-year Treasury yield after spiking to 5% the day before.
I think investors are of the mindset that maybe this yield has peaked, at least for the near term. Add to that a week in which a third of the companies in the S&P 500 are going to report earnings, and so far so good. The companies that have reported in these first 2 days have come in better than expected, and I think that's setting the tone for the rest of the week.
Reporting after the bell, Alphabet topped quarterly earnings and revenue estimates, but its cloud division missed revenue estimates, sending its shares down more than 4% in after-hours trading. Microsoft, by contrast, beat quarterly estimates in all segments, driven by strength in its cloud computing and PC businesses. Shares climbed more than 3.5% after the close. In other earnings news, Verizon surged more than 9% after raising its annual free cash flow forecast, while General Electric rose 6.5% after the conglomerate lifted its full-year profit forecast. And Coca-Cola hiked its annual sales outlook, sending its stock up nearly 3%, while 3M rose more than 5% on the heels of its upbeat quarterly report.
Eurozone business activity took a surprise turn for the worse this month as demand fell in a broad-based downturn across the region. A survey showed, suggesting the bloc may slip into recession. The closely watched gauge of business health dropped to 46.5.
Eurozone business activity showed signs of flagging, and that could have the region sliding towards recession. Tuesday saw release of the October Purchasing Managers' Indexes for the bloc. The closely watched gauge of business health dropped to 46.5. That's the lowest in almost 3 years, or over a decade if you ignore the period of the global health crisis. It's also well below the 50-point mark that separates growth from contraction. The details of the October figures made even grimmer reading. A sub-index for the region's key service sector sank below all forecasts. One economist told Reuters that the numbers indicate hiring is all but frozen in the sector, while manufacturers are actually ramping up plans to shed jobs. Forward-looking indexes also sank, with numbers on new business and future output both declining. Put it all together, and some market watchers say it would be no surprise to see the Eurozone enter recession in the second half of the year. For now, though, that isn't quite the consensus view. A Reuters survey of economists predicts growth will flatline, but not fall, over the current quarter.
An Oregon state court has said the off-duty pilot who had tried to cut the engine power off an Air Alaska jet mid-flight over the weekend had taken psychedelic mushrooms 2 days before boarding the flight and hadn't slept for 40 hours. The pilot pleaded not guilty to state charges through his attorney. Here's a report.
Court documents say an off-duty pilot who tried to cut the engine power of an Air Alaska jet mid-flight over the weekend had taken psychedelic mushrooms 2 days before boarding and hadn't slept for 40 hours. That pilot, Joseph David Emerson, appeared in Oregon State Court for the first time on Tuesday. He pleaded not guilty to state charges through his attorney. They included 83 counts of attempted murder, one for every crew member and passenger on the plane besides himself, and a single count of endangering the aircraft, which was bound for San Francisco Sunday before it was diverted to Portland, Oregon. The flight crew told investigators that Emerson, who was sitting in a jump seat in the cockpit, tried to grab the fire suppression handles, and that he came close to shutting down hydraulic operation and fuel to both engines of the plane, and was seconds away from turning it into a glider. Federal prosecutors said that after the cockpit incident, Emerson, in wrist restraints, tried to grab the handle of an emergency exit during the flight's descent, but was stopped by a flight attendant. A court document later said Emerson told police he'd been depressed for the past 6 months. He'd taken magic mushrooms for the first time and believed he was having a nervous breakdown. Medical research has shown that psilocybin, a naturally occurring hallucinogen found in certain mushroom varieties, commonly called magic mushrooms, to be beneficial as a treatment for anxiety, depression, and other mental disorders. Oregon is the first U.S. state to decriminalize psilocybin. Since 2020, it has legalized supervised therapeutic use for adults at least 21 years old. However, psilocybin remains strictly prohibited under federal law.
Well, that's all the time we have on this particular show. If you have been, thanks so much for watching.
They picked my husband. He was tortured there for 2 years. He was enforced disappeared. We had no idea where he is. Within 15 minutes, we got the information that the whole area is surrounded by Pakistan Army. I came out from that in disguise, and after 5-6 hours, I was in Kandahar. I don't have any message for Pakistan. There is no politician in Pakistan. They are puppets of Pakistan Army.
Streaming now. This and more streaming on world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.